Alright, so over the weekend, as many did, I watched Evil Dead Burn. So I took some time, I thought about it, I slept on it, I let the movie marinate, and now I'm ready to discuss it. So, let's talk about Evil Dead Burn. But first, as always, welcome back to Cody's Horror Channel. I am your host, Cody. If you guys like the content that you guys see here today or any of my other videos, please make sure to like, comment, follow, share, subscribe. I am on a bunch of social medias. I have a Facebook, obviously a TikTok, and I have a YouTube channel. So please subscribe to everything, like and follow. It does wonders for me. So, with all of that out of the way, let's dive into Evil Dead Burn. One more quick thing before I get into this video. This is spoiler heavy. I talk a lot about what happens in the movie. So if you have not seen the movie, do not watch this video. Go see the movie, make your own opinions, think about it the way you want, then come on back and watch this video and discuss this with me. And once you've done that and you've seen this video, please comment whatever you got, any kind of questions. I always love to chat back and forth with anybody and everybody. So let's get into it. So I went into this movie with the highest of hopes. I am a huge fan of Evil Dead, huge fan of Evil Dead Rise. So I knew that this movie had a very high expectation, and I don't think it reached it. I think it did not live up to the hype. I was trying to think of the word to describe how I felt about this movie, and somebody asked me in a comment, were you disappointed in this movie? And at first I was, well, no, I don't think I was disappointed. But then when I got to thinking about it, I feel like that's the best word to sum this up, is disappointing. This movie just did not deliver like the last two did. And I'm not sure why. I feel like they did not focus on things that they should have, and then they prioritized other things. So we will get into those, but let's start at the top of the movie and the beginning of it. As we know from Evil Dead and Evil Dead Rise, these movies start fast and furious. Evil Dead, they start with burning the lady in the cabin. Evil Dead Rise, obviously the whole scene with Jessica in the lake and the drone. So this one starts off with her again. And the thing that I find interesting is that the gentlemen that go out there and they go fishing, right? They go, hey, have you heard the story of the woman in the lake? The story of the woman in the lake. Not, hey, did you hear about the lady who killed herself? Or the lady that murdered the people? The story of the woman in the lake means this sounds like a folklore. Because the other guy goes, I don't even believe that. So how long has Jessica just been chilling in the lake? Since when does a Deadite just wait around for people to show up to kill? No, they're actively hunting people. They're actively trying to find other souls to take. So she just chills in the lake until the right person pops up. So that was weird right off the get-go. And then to keep playing on with Jessica, so she goes about, does her thing with the guys that are fishing, and then she goes out into the road and she waits. She waits for the right time. So then here comes Will, coming around, she steps out, she gets hit, yada yada yada. She gets decapitated, the whole thing. Oh, actually, sorry. One more thing. I'm gonna go back to the lake because I forgot something else. How can she boil an entire lake? Like, I get it, these Deadites are, like, supernatural and superhuman and whatnot, but since when do they have the power to boil an entire body of water? Like, that is ridiculous. If they could have done that, they could have just burned down the cabin. Or burn down the freaking hotel, or the apartment. Like, this is, like, an obnoxious amount of power that I didn't know that these Deadites had, so I thought that was also weird. Okay, so back to the car crash. What I thought was weird is after that she got decapitated. That's fine. She's like, oh, we finally found you, which you get later on. But also, when can a Deadite summon another Deadite? She says the 4 words that summons a Deadite. I can't remember. Kunda something, something, something. I'm not going to say them, obviously. So, since when is that? If that was the case, they could have summoned other Deadites throughout the entire movie. You have to, like, transfer this to another Deadite through blood or something. I'm not necessarily 100% sure. It seems like a lot of blood, some kind of bodily fluid between the two. But she can just summon another one after she's been decapitated. That's never been a thing. So I don't know why they did that. So the whole beginning with Jessica right away kind of threw me off. So then you get into the actual brunt of the movie. And the main thing that I had a problem with was the lack of storyline. I have heard this from a lot of other people and they talked about it when they did the early previews and the early showings. Yes, it had the brutality. Yes, it had the gore. Yes, it had the carnage. That's fantastic. That's awesome. But it has to be accompanied with something. And the whole point of this movie was not about a Necronomicon. It was about the Kadarian dagger. And so they're hunting to find this because this family's grandfather is the one who found it. But, like, they don't really explain that very well. They're just like, oh, he knew the Circle of Wise Men, and he found the Kadarian dagger, and then that's it. And it's like, yeah, but, like, how did he find it? Where was he at? How did he get into relation with the Circle of Wise Men? And then they're just kind of going for this dagger. And then what also is kind of interesting is, like, the dagger itself. I feel like the dagger is incredibly underwhelming. Like, it's just like a tiny little blade on a handle. Like, I get it, like, it doesn't have to be amazing, but this is a huge thing. This kills Deadites. Like, it should be some cool, big, ceremonial dagger. I know it looked way different in the old Evil Deads. It had, like, the skull, and they referenced it in this movie. But, like, I don't know, underwhelming. The reveal was underwhelming. She was just grabbing random knives and stabbing the guy, hoping it was the right dagger. So that was kind of a weird way to display this dagger. And like I said, the dagger itself was also very underwhelming in the end. To go along with the dagger and the lack of storyline, I feel like the one other thing that really bothered me were the Deadites themselves. Not that they looked weird or that their mannerisms were very off, but it's just the way they were. Like, this movie to me felt way more like a vampire movie. Like 30 Days of Night style. Like, you have the dad, Edgar, who interacts with his son in the morgue, and then he obviously grabs him, burns him. You start to see his eyes start to change, which means the Deadite has now been transferred over. But Edgar takes hours to change. He doesn't change until he kind of goes psycho, which was also weird because he wasn't a Deadite at that point and killed his dog. And side note, don't ever kill the animal. Just don't. I hate that in horror movies. You leave the critters alone, all right? Especially a dog. Don't kill a dog. But he goes psycho, kills the dog, and then they're going to bring him to the hospital, and then he dies, and then he becomes a Deadite in the car. But, like, what was all of that leading up to that? He just went insane because his son passed away? Like, who just does that without having a little bit of that Deadite in them? But then, why didn't the Deadite just take him over right away? In every other movie, they've always taken him over right away. Does he have to die for the Deadite to take him over? Because that hasn't always been the case. And along with that, Susan, his wife, who he ends up making out with, so that transfer of bodily fluids with the blood because he was all bloody, she doesn't turn either for a very long time until it's a point to make the story carry on. And she doesn't even die. So it has to wait for Edgar to die to take over, but yet it can take Susan over without her dying. And both of them are prolonged, which isn't how that works. They take you over instantly. In any other movies, it's like within minutes that this happens. And you go back to Evil Dead. Olivia. Mia pukes all over her, and then she goes to clean up, and the Deadites attack her. She didn't die. You don't have to die for the Deadite, so why did Edgar have to die? And then to go along with Edgar, too, the whole scene with the gun. Like, no Deadite is going to clearly shoot themselves in the head. And as you've seen in, I don't remember if it happened so much in Evil Dead, but it happened in Rise, when they get hit in the head, they kind of have to do a factory reset. You know, when they hit L with the scissors up the nose, they have to do that to Bridget with Stephanie through the head. It makes them stop. So why is he going to actively shoot himself in the head? All he's going to do is jeopardize his Deadite status. So that made no sense. There's so much about this story and the way that they depicted all of these things that made no sense when it comes to the other two movies. So I just think they were trying to do the shock and awe factor in it way too much. They did not follow a good story. Maybe in the next one, Evil Dead Wrath, I think it's called. I don't necessarily remember the name right off the top of my head. Maybe they're going to do a little bit better with storytelling and explain more stuff. But to me, this movie just didn't do it. It was a fun watch. But, like, if you're a fan of the Evil Dead franchise and you've rewatched the other ones and you're expecting that same kind of quality, this movie was big time lacking. And I don't think it lived up to the hype. And from my understanding, from what I've seen very briefly online, the turnabout for the money it's making is not very good for the budget it had. So that kind of shows you how this is going and how people necessarily aren't loving this movie like they really thought they would. And quickly, before I wrap this video up, let's talk about the end credit scenes. So, this whole thing also at the end got very confusing. And again, I know it was just a snippet of the movie, and obviously with the next movies, they're going to explain it more, and that's fine. But I'm confused how Elle is back. She is in the very post-credit scenes. There's 2 post-credit scenes. But they see Ellie Bixler in an urn. Also, I don't know how they have an urn of her. She was destroyed by a wood chipper. And then you see her in the mirror, and she comes back, and she says Mama's back, and she kills the little girl. But see, that's the thing that I don't understand, is how is she back? Because the Deadite that took over Elle, took over Jessica, then took over Will, and then to Edgar, and then his whole family. So that Deadite obviously is not in Edgar anymore. It's not in Joseph. It's not in any of them. It's in the grandma. Because she's the last one that survived that didn't get killed by the dagger, right? So, or, the dagger, sorry. They killed Will with the dagger too with the tar. So that one theoretically should have been in the grandma and then transferred to the lady in the Jeep that the grandma scratched. So the Deadite that possessed Ellie is no longer around. So who summoned whatever Deadite attacked Ellie or is part of Ellie? Or if that has to do with Jessica getting decapitated in the first movie, so she summoned a brand new Deadite that took over this whole family, and the one that was part of Jessica has now been released and found the disembodied chunks of Ellie or the dust, apparently, from the urn and brought her back to life. I don't know. I don't get it. I think it's cool that she's back. I don't know if it's like, Hell's favorite Deadite or the Dark One's favorite Deadite, so they bring her back, but that just seems really confusing, and when you really kind of dive into the story itself, it just doesn't make sense. Once the body is destroyed, which it was, bury them alive, burn them, dismember them, that's it, the Deadite's gone. So how is she back? I don't understand how she's back. I'm excited she's back because she was probably one of the coolest Deadites, but I'm very, very interested to see how this progresses into the next movie and how they tie all this story together, and man, I do hope it makes sense. So, Evil Dead Burn, obviously give it a watch yourself, and obviously make your own judgments. Obviously, don't watch this video if you haven't seen it yet. But I was disappointed. Very, very excited for this movie. I hyped it up for weeks when I knew about this was coming, and just not so happy. Yeah, probably about a 4 out of 10 stars, maybe a 5. Just very run-of-the-mill movie. Nothing spectacular in this one. So here's hoping that the next installment is better than this one. Let's hope.